All right. Hello, everybody's. It is, well, how shall I put this? Happy October. If if you're listening to this, you made it.
Almost fall, but feels like friggin' summer in most places.
Not here. You know what's weird is that summer went out with such a storm. Uh, Literally, one day we
Hmm.
had this huge thunder lightning storm, 3,000 strikes in an hour,
Oh, wow.
and that was it. Summer was over.
Dang. Kind of like last night around here, we had a storm blew in and lowered the temp about, I don't know, 10, 20 degrees.
Wow.
But yeah, that's the Midwest for you, so.
You know what? You know what we need to do tonight? We have to put the disclaimer up.
Oh, yes, we do.
Let's see. Dun, dun, dun. There it is. We are gonna show you some stuff that may be disturbing to certain people. Um,
Yes.
and so, if you don't like disturbing images, then you might want to move on. If you do like disturbing images, you came to the right place.
Consider this your trigger warning if you are easily disturbed or have a weak stomach. But if you are not and you're a little weird like we are and
if
like
you're
studying this
if
shit,
you're
you're
really
here.
disturbed, then you're in the right place.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Of course, we started with a lot of the jokes on the page today. I had all those old memes on my phone of the
Yeah.
guy we're looking at. So I put those up. I think the funniest one was the dialogue between him and
And,
between
and
Dahmer
Bundy.
and Ted Bundy
Yeah. Yeah, that was hilarious.
with Gacy at the end of it. With Dahmer saying, "Hey Ted, why don't cannibals eat clowns?" Bundy looks at him, says, "Why?" Dahmer, "Because they taste funny." Bundy, LOL. Gacy at the bottom in his clown outfit. Fuck you guys.
Nice twist at the end.
Oh, it's just great. But yeah, he kind of compliments the one we did 2 weeks ago with Albert Fish, too.
Hey, question for you.
Uh huh.
Do we have some history today?
I I have some news items. Hadn't
All
been
right.
feeling too well this past week, so not a whole lot with the historical
So,
research, but
all right.
um,
So this week in crime history means this week.
yes, literally this
It is
week.
very, very current.
Of course, we have the Dallas cop getting 10 years in prison for shooting a guy in his apartment. Um, Not sure how people feel about that. Personally, I
I
thought it
prefer
was
to not
light.
be a shot.
Yeah, yeah. You know, honestly, I think it was light, uncomfortably light. But and then did you see the twist on this where today a lot of people are getting pissed at the judge for coming down off the bench and basically giving her a hug and handing her a Bible after the sentence was handed out.
So,
So, yeah, I know. I mean, I didn't see what was such a big deal about that. As long as if there was anything in the future involving her and that judge recuses herself. But, you know, I mean, she basically said it doesn't have to be this way. You can do better things from now on. You can mend yourself, and that was it. So, but yeah, now you have all these people saying, "Oh, the judge needs to step down," and I don't know. I just don't see it. But yeah, a couple other things happening. This a headline on, and it's from CNN about 5 days ago. 3 Catholic churches in El Paso have been targeted in arson attacks, and the FBI is offering a reward for info on the culprits. Um,
Well,
May
that's kind of
7th,
weird.
yeah, it really is. May 7th at St. Matthew's, followed by another a week later at St. Patrick. And then about a month later, June 15th, St. Jude, all in the city. It'd be interesting to see what comes of that. I would imagine they're, related, but don't totally know. Let's see. This one in Kansas City on September 26th. Girl shot in head by a stray bullet dies on her 12th birthday. Really sad story there.
Ugh, stray bullets, man. See, and this
Yes.
this is a thing that people, even cops are guilty of this, right? You get tunnel vision and you think things are only going to go where you imagine them going,
Yep.
where you want them to go, and they just don't.
Yeah. I mean, it really is just a sad, sad story. Is actually Harvey, Illinois. My apologies.
Wow.
South suburb of Chicago. She was on her computer choosing T-shirt designs for her birthday.
Oh man,
Uh,
that's awful. On the other hand, falling bullets are not nearly as deadly as people imagine.
yeah, I
I mean,
remember hearing one about. I forget where that was, but yeah, they're not nearly as
they
bad
do
as
not come
that.
down at the velocity at which they were discharged. There's a terminal
No.
velocity for bullets that's really not all that fast. It would
Mm-hmm.
hurt. It might even penetrate the skin a little bit, but they're just it's not like somebody's, standing over your head firing a gun.
Right. Oh, absolutely. Uh, Now this one was interesting too. See the headline: Hedge fund heir gets 30 years to life in prison for killing his dad over allowance.
What?
From the
Was it
Daily
a lot of
Beast.
allowance?
Thomas Gilbert Jr., convicted of murdering his hedge fund founder father in 2015, gets 30 years to life on Friday, according to NBC New York. The 34-year-old Princeton graduate was found guilty of second-degree murder and criminal possession of a weapon earlier this year, after his father was found dead in his family's Manhattan high-rise apartment. Um, Hours before his father was killed, Gilbert Jr.'s weekly allowance was cut to $300 compared to the $1,000 he originally had. So he puts a bullet in him.
Wow.
It is, wow, it's beyond fucked up.
Well, I don't know why he didn't shoot him over the $1,000. What was it, $1,000 a month?
Wouldn't get you far in New York.
No, and his dad's a hedge fund manager.
Yeah,
That's pretty
yeah.
chintzy. Come on, dads, get with the times.
uh,
Are you paying guys, trying to pay guys $1 to wash your car?
I guess so, man. Uh, oh yeah, and then you had this. Uh, September 30th, Stacey Dash, the clueless actress, arrested on domestic battery charges in Florida,
Really?
according to Pasco County Sheriff's Office. Dash and the unnamed victim got into a quote verbal argument on Sunday and pushed the victim and slapped him in the face. Left red scratch marks on his left upper arm. So we'll see what comes of that. And then you had this one, pretty gruesome, out of Arizona. A dad has been accused of killing his son by pouring hot water down his throat to, quote, cast a demon out.
Jesus.
The man allegedly told police he, quote, saw something evil in his son and he knew he had to cast the demon out. This is actually on a Indian reservation over by Tucson. I can't remember the name of the tribe, but this guy that they're charging, oh, here we go, the Pasqua Yaqui, Yaqui Indian Reservation, but this guy was not a member of the tribe. Married in, I suppose. Around 4, tribal authorities arrived at the Martinez home after getting a call about a burn to a child. The boy's parents were standing outside, and when police asked what happened, the woman replied, "He can tell you." According to the criminal complaint, Pablo Martinez told officers that they wouldn't understand and, quote, "were not
No.
in the right mindset or belief."
Yeah,
Okay.
here's the thing about laws. They do not require belief.
Nope,
Kind of like
not at
science.
all. Yep, exactly. Pablo Martinez explained that within the last week, he noticed that his son had a, quote, demon inside of him and that he needed to save him. The boy's adopted mother also told officers that the 6-year-old had, quote, been acting demonic. Yeah,
A 6-year-old? Yeah,
a 6-year-old.
they do that.
Kind of comes with the
It
territory,
really
I'd say.
does. It really does.
uh, absolutely. That is all I have in the way of news.
All right. So, we're talking this week about a guy who is very well known.
Yes.
Very well
Pro-
known. But
mhm.
people just kind of have, and I admit to being one of those people, just kind of broad strokes concepts about this guy, right? Like,
Yeah.
he's a cannibal. And then
Yes.
it doesn't go much beyond that, really.
Yeah, it really doesn't, but in so many ways, he was an oddity too. And I don't just mean that in terms of the popular mind, but he's an oddity when you examine serial killers as a whole. Much more so than a lot of the others. He's one that I don't think you could call him a sadist, was the big thing.
Interesting.
But we'll get to that. Absolutely. We're talking about the Milwaukee Cannibal, none other than Jeffrey Dahmer.
Jeffrey Dahmer.
I remember one of the first things that I knew about this guy was my mother explaining that he is the reason she believes in capital punishment, although he did not die by capital punishment. He's actually
Oh,
had
right.
his.
Well, I mean, not by the courts doing.
No. Oh, no, not at all. I mean, he had his brains beaten in basically in prison by another inmate, which we actually have a picture of him when we'll get to it. But um, yeah, I mean, he is plenty vicious in other ways. Born in 1960 to Lionel Dahmer, his
Oh,
father
so
and
he
mother.
was the same age as my little brother.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah, born in.
I'm sorry, my much older brother.
Well, yep.
Oops.
Total of 17 men and boys from 1978 to 1991 under Dahmer's kill list. But yeah, he's born in 1960 to parents, Lionel Dahmer, and I believe Sherry was the mother's name. I was just looking for that. But yeah, they were fairly normal, people. They raised him more or less normal, but his dad was basically a full-time student through a lot of this, going to get his degree in chemical engineering at college. He's actually Dr. Lionel Dahmer now.
Joyce was his mother's name.
Thank you, Joyce. But yeah, there's been a lot of theorizing as far as Jeffrey goes that his dad being at school kept him basically absent from his son, from a lot of his son's life. But other than that, there wasn't any abuse in Jeffrey's history. There wasn't any of the typical markers that we've seen in a lot of these other cases. But one thing about him that they noticed was he really liked dissecting animals and some say torturing them. Although I honestly didn't find any verified reports of cruelty to animals.
Well, yeah,
Uh,
I mean, if you're gonna say dissecting animals is an indication of
Dead animals.
possible, you know, sociopathy, then every biologist needs to be investigated.
Yes. Yes, and that's really a good question there. Where does this go from basic, scientific curiosity that's good and that should be nurtured into, pure morbidity,
Well, it
like you see?
right, it has to do with is the animal still alive? Is it
Yeah,
torture or is it investigate? Is it curiosity about the biology? I
that's
mean, right, because Michelangelo used to dig up corpses to study
mhm.
the physiology of muscles and things like that
Oh yeah, and
for his artwork.
Jeffrey, yeah, Jeffrey did this with animals too, and that's what he said is he wanted to know how they worked. Were his words, but I didn't find anything about him, killing them or being cruel to them. Just that he really liked to do this with dead animals. Um, and he asked his dad one day, "Is there a way that you can clean bones?" And it was actually Lionel who showed him how to do that. Um, and imparted a bit of that science to his son. But yeah, they moved later on to Ohio when Lionel actually got a job with a chemical company, getting his degree. That was in Bath, Ohio. And we actually have the house that they lived in for a while.
Yeah, let me pull that up. Why not? Let's see. Well,
But
it's
yeah, they.
yeah. I got pictures of all the family pictures and growing up pictures in the household.
Mhm.
Starting up now.
And they moved there, and again, it was fairly normal. Although another thing that people started noticing about Dahmer is that he would drink very heavily. He kind of started developing his problems with alcohol. I
Mm.
think around that time they moved to Ohio. But
As a teenager.
yeah, a lot of the people at his school thought it was weird that he would drink both hard liquor and beer. Was their
Ugh.
big thing. Yeah, but hey, this was.
I hear that causes bad hangovers.
Yeah, I know from experience it does, but yeah, I don't do that
I was
anymore.
taught to never do that. I'll just say, and I haven't.
I was taught that as well, but I was stupid enough to do it a couple times. So, yeah, there is Jeffrey and Lionel right there. But yeah, mixing those actually mixes the congeners in both the types of alcohol. Which the congeners, for people who don't know, that's all the leftover shit in beer or spirits that isn't beer or spirits, and that's what makes you sick. Um,
Oh,
but yeah, they moved to Bath, Ohio, and they're going. Jeffrey's going through high school, and his parents turn out to divorce. Um, and they both move out of there, and they basically leave Dahmer alone in this house at age 18 in Ohio, which we're still waiting on that
but
pick.
wait, hold on. Both parents move out and leave him in the house
Yes,
at 18?
yes. There
Jesus,
was no
that okay.
custody arrangements with him, but yeah, they left him in the house basically. He had free reign of the place.
Oh man.
And that,
Can you imagine?
well, that was where he did his first two murders. His first one was he actually picked up a guy who was hitchhiking to a concert and took him back there to the house. And this was also shortly after him realizing that he was gay, too, which
Ah,
sort of, I guess, is bubbling under the surface until in high school he realized it. And I don't think he ever really came out to his parents or anybody else, but yeah, he picked this guy up and took him back to the house, and they were drinking beer, listening to music. And apparently, that he was wanting to get away from Dahmer. I guess he might have not been wanting to engage in the sex at any rate with Dahmer.
yeah.
I don't think he was heterosexual, but he wasn't wanting to engage with Dahmer on that level. So, what does Jeffrey do? Instead of letting the guy get away, he picks up a barbell and hits him over the head.
Because that's the way to convince him to stay. Jesus.
Well, and that's where you really get into what I think drove a lot of his psychology, and that was loneliness. You really see that, I think, in a lot of cannibals too.
Mm.
Is that the ultimate thing here is loneliness with them.
It's a it's just I've heard it described as a way of possessing the other person
Absolutely.
and
I
keeping
would
them with them all the time because they've consumed their flesh.
hmm And they do not leave that way. And
Right.
that was, I think, the thing that
Although
really
they
motivated
do.
Jeffrey. Well, yeah,
I mean,
yeah. I
but
mean,
in their minds they never do.
no, I mean they don't. But yeah, so he gets this guy there. He kills him, and after all the knowledge he's accumulated from dissecting all these animals, he basically dismembers him in the back of the house and in the woods, which there was a fairly substantial wooded area behind it, the house there. And he takes a sledgehammer to his bones,
Oh.
which that was one thing that he did with more than a few of his victims, actually, was that sledgehammer to grind the bones up.
Well, see, and that right there would tell me if I was sitting on a jury, I would say not insane.
Oh,
He's clearly trying to hide his actions.
oh, I couldn't agree more with you there. And most definitely. Um, and
Yeah.
getting it, there's a lot of theories around that too. I think he was somebody who definitely had a personality disorder, but not a thought disorder, which would
So
have impaired.
what was his IQ level like?
I didn't see that in what I was reading. I only saw a diagnosis of schizotypal disorder from a couple of shrinks, and I think they had something like intermittent psychosis as well, but that was the main thing with him was the schizotypal. And I was just looking for my copy of the DSM to read what that is.
All right, according to Wikipedia, he was known to be highly intelligent in high school,
Yeah, but
even though he had average grades.
oh, uh
Shit,
huh.
sounds like me.
Well, yeah. And just saying, and looking at his fantasy life too, it was getting more and more rich around this time that he was being left alone. Around age 18. He described later to the shrinks his first violent fantasy as he conceived of it. He noticed this jogger around where he was living, this guy who looked really good to him. And, instead of actually approaching the guy, his thoughts were, okay, I'm going to go wait in a bush by this trail with a baseball bat. I'm going to knock this guy on the ground. And while he's out cold, I'm just going to lay with him.
Like lay
That
down next to him.
Yes.
Not rape him or anything. Just try to be
Just
close to him.
closeness, essentially. Yeah. Again, getting back to that idea of loneliness, where
Yeah.
it kind of started festering there. Um, but yeah, and he ended up killing two in that house in Bath, Ohio. Ugh,
Yeah.
I'm having some issues with my site here again on the browsers. Sorry. Was having
Right.
issues before we went on the air tonight, and I'm trying to still resolve them a little bit. But yeah, he ends up, still drinking hard, drinking heavily, and his life is sort of just going downhill from there. So his dad actually came back to the house in Bath with his new bride. I guess it was his fiance at the time. Her name was Sherry, and we actually had that pic of her I saw with Lionel Dahmer. It was the black and white one with some
Oh
text.
yeah. Yeah. That'll come
And
back
it,
around.
and they saw how Jeffrey was living in this house, and it's a pigsty. It's just not right. They know something is horribly, horribly off when they come back there and they see him. And his dad basically says, "I want you to get a little bit of structure. I want you to go into the army."
Oh.
And so Dahmer does that. And he is stationed over in West Germany as a medic. And they actually said he was a above average soldier in what he did.
I
But it
can
was,
I can believe that for sure. Actually, a lot of sociopaths who have a desire to live in socially acceptable ways, they will choose careers in police and military to
oh
to
yeah,
to give them socially acceptable outlets
oh
for
yeah.
their you know inclinations.
And that's not just even serial killers getting,
No,
close to
not
that.
no, not even that. I mean, you know, uh, I know one guy he actually knows he's a sociopath. Um,
Oh really?
yeah, and he thought that the ideal career for him would be a sniper.
Oh, I could definitely see that.
Yeah, it's a good
Absolutely.
job for a sociopath, right?
Oh yeah.
The thing is, you aren't,
Ideal, really.
really, yeah.
Definitely. But yeah, I don't know how much of that was him wanting to go in to it though. As it was he was kind of, forced into it for lack of a better word. But yeah, he was stationed as a medic in West Germany at the time. And during his service there, it actually came to light later on with his crimes back in the States that there was a couple of soldiers he raped over there.
Oh, really?
They didn't make any claims about it when he was in the service, but yeah, after his crimes were known, it sort of came out. Um, but
Wow.
yeah, yeah,
It's interesting that he didn't turn into an angel of death type of a person in that role,
that's true. Being a medic,
right?
he didn't, go
access
study
access to
that.
access to drugs and sick slash dying people, all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that would have been a interesting career choice for him. But actually, when he tried college out too, it was business. I think was his major, but he was only in it for 3 months. So it was that, and then it was the army. And then he came back after being honorably discharged from there. Basically,
Doesn't that just seem weird? I don't know, to me it just seems weird that somebody who's that messed up would be a good enough soldier to not be kicked out even.
from my understanding, what I was reading with that, it was kind of borderline that they went with honorable. It
Okay.
was essentially the
He
bureaucracy
wasn't
decided
he
that his
wasn't great.
issues, yeah, they essentially decided that his issues wouldn't be a problem in the civilian sphere. So they thought, there's no reason to give him a dishonorable discharge.
Right.
So, yeah, but, going from there, he comes back and he ends up living with his grandmother, where he kills a few more of them. And his his third actually major kill was at the Ambassador Hotel up there in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where he picked up a guy at a gay bar and took him back there. And Dahmer said with this one, he didn't remember murdering him.
Hmm.
The way that he described it with this episode was basically dissociation,
Hmm.
where he was in bed with the guy and then he's out cold, and when he gets up the guy's dead, he's bleeding out all over, and he has his chest is black and blue.
Well, he could have just been blackout drunk, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
it very well could have
I
been.
mean, he was drinking. He admits to that, right?
Yes. Oh yeah, and up
And it,
into this time he had a history at the bathhouses
mm.
around that area of trying to drug the men who went in.
I mean, have you ever had a blackout episode?
I have dissociated fully before. Yeah, I know how it is.
Yeah, I had an episode with um, a sleeping pill and a little bit of alcohol. Not even very much. I mean, a very mild sleeping pill and a very little bit of alcohol. And the thing
Hmm.
is if you don't go to sleep after taking that, you will have a blackout episode.
Oh wow.
And the reason I know it is because I woke up and there were dishes laying around my room that I don't remember getting,
Oh wow.
and a few things like that, and a text I don't remember writing, and it was a really good text, by the way. It was like I remember reading and going, "Damn, I wish I'd written that."
Oh wow. Yeah,
um,
mine was actually from Ativan.
but
I
but
had a bad
it's
reaction.
it's terrifying though after the fact to
Lost
real
time.
yeah to realize that you have done things with zero memory of it.
Yep. Oh, absolutely.
And
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 it.
and if you have those tendencies,
Hmm.
that's the kind of thing you're gonna do when you're blacked out, I think.
It brings out the real person in
Yeah.
a lot of ways. I'm honestly not sure what happened when I had that episode, but I just remember waking up in the hospital in a bed. And
Whoa.
they evidently administered, I guess they administered another benzo. Because, like I said, mine was a bad reaction to Ativan
Wow.
when it happened. But yeah, so. But yes, around this time, Dahmer also, his drinking got to the point where he was starting to get arrested for like drunken disorderly was the first one for him when he was back. He was fined $60, given a suspended sentence with that. Um, he found employment as a phlebotomist, actually, at the
Why is that so
Milwaukee
funny?
at the Milwaukee Blood Plasma Center. 10 months before he was laid off. And let's see. It's kind of weird that this wouldn't do it though, because he was also arrested for indecent exposure at around that same time. Um, let's see. That was when he allegedly exposed himself to a crowd of 25 women and children.
What?
It was at the Wisconsin State Fair in 1982. So you have the first murders occurring in 1978, and we get that far. And it was around 1985 when he got the job that he was kind of known for packing chocolate at the Ambrosia Chocolate Factory.
That's not a metaphor.
No, that's why I said packing chocolate, not fudge. Yeah, but yeah, that is not one of the Dahmer jokes that we were going to get into. But let's see. There was an incident there where he was allegedly propositioned by another man while sitting in the public library. And let's see, the guy threw a note offering to perform fellatio upon Dahmer, did not respond. But this incident, he said, kind of stirred in his mind these fantasies that we were talking about of dominance specifically.
Hmm.
But, you know, again, I think you look at it and there really isn't a whole lot of traditional, as far as our subject matter, sadism in the way that Dahmer would kill. Um, the way that
Right,
he sort of
right. He
refined it was
wasn't
strangling.
he wasn't trying to have a prolonged torture session.
No, not at all. Definitely not at all. But yeah, it was around this same time when he's also getting kicked out of the bathhouses for, like I said, drugging the guys, that he is also known to have stolen a male mannequin from a store, which he was using for
Jesus.
stimulation. Yeah. And that his grandmother, because remember, he's living in her house at this time, discovered the item stowed in a closet and demanded that he discard it. So, yeah, there you go.
Oh my God.
Oy. Let's see. I was just looking at the timeline here. It's usually his MO he was refining in those bathhouses sort of too, with sleeping pills usually in a drink that he would give to his partners, his victims,
So
liquor laced with sedatives, and
so
raping.
far, I mean, as far as the world is concerned, even his family, he probably seems a little odd, but nothing to get too concerned about.
Yeah, the local guy who, you know, he's a little weird, probably
Yeah,
just because he's a drinker or what have you.
right. He acts out in weird ways. He does a few odd things, but nothing to get too worked up about. Hey, just knock this shit off and we'll be fine.
Yeah, basically.
But
Um,
but that's not what's really going on.
no, no, he's keeping it, you know, to himself. It almost makes me wonder because there was an incident going back to when he was in high school.
Hmm.
Somebody actually saw him drinking gin in class.
Yeah.
And when they looked at him and said, "What are you doing?" he just looked back and said, "It's my medicine." Well, and it almost makes you wonder if he was
Did he
doing that
really
to sort
think?
of black it out then.
Did he really? He might have actually. I mean, that's classic self-medication
Oh yeah.
mentality, right?
Yeah. I mean, if he was having these fantasies back then and he really meant it.
Well, I mean, in the 70s, um, being gay was not. I mean, even where I grew up, being gay was kind of it wasn't a hateful thing. I mean, people didn't seem to react in a hateful way that I ever noticed, but it was more
Hmm.
comical, right?
Yeah.
Um, than really, off-putting or anything like that. So, but it certainly wasn't, just ac- accepted. So,
Hmm.
I mean, here's how it was with one of my friends in high school was that he ran around quote unquote acting gay a lot.
Hmm.
Well, it turned out he really was gay.
Oh yeah.
And he masked being gay by acting gay
No, sure.
in a humorous way.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, you know, a lot of people use humor to cope, myself included.
Yeah.
Different stuff. I mean, we both, I think, definitely do that, but yeah, it makes you wonder. Uh, you know, let's see, it was around that time again, around 85, and getting into 86, where he was actually arrested again for dickwagon in front of two 12-year-old boys this time, as he stood close to the Kinnickinnick River up there. Wisconsin is such a weird state.
Well, I
You guys
mean,
have Ed Gein too, man. But I'm just
and
south of you,
and the
so.
Packers.
The Packers. Uh, yeah, let's see. He claimed with that one that he was just peeing and they came upon him. But yeah, the charge was apparently changed to disorderly conduct.
Hmm.
You got 1 year probation with that. And it was then that you get into the Ambassador Hotel. Stephen Tuomi was that victim. That was November 20, 1985. Again, he's residing with his grandmother.
Okay.
And God knows he must have been putting enough money away to get a room at this hotel, but he takes Tuomi back and he could not believe what had happened, in his words. And he gets up and the guy's chest is caved in. He's dead. He's black and blue all over. The theory was a little bit later with that during this blackout, Dahmer tried to get at his heart to eat it, if you can imagine that.
Whoa.
That came out when he was talking with the shrinks in prison, actually. But yeah, blood seeping out. And to dispose of the body this time, he purchases a large suitcase. He transports the body to his grandmother's house. 1 week later, he severs the head, arms, and legs, fillets the bones from the
Oh,
body
a
before cutting the
week?
flesh. 1 week,
What time of
apparently.
year it was
At
this?
winter,
Okay, so
1987. He might have been, I mean, hell, if he was going to do something with it, he might have been waiting for the ground to not be so damn hard.
well, I mean,
Go
the
out there and
being
bury it.
being winter in Wisconsin, I was just wondering how the body didn't stink to high heaven after a week.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's going to be cold up there, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, that definitely explains it. But the entire process, it took him only 2 hours to do it. He disposed of all of them, excluding his head, in the trash can. And that's another thing. Before we get too much further into the other victims here,
Yeah.
do we have the picture of the skeleton altar?
Oh, sure, I can pull that up. One moment, please.
Now, if you can believe this, this is something I did not know until I started reading about this case more. Dahmer had told investigators after they caught him in 1991 that had you been about 6 months later, this is what you would have found. And we actually have a mock-up of it that somebody did and put on the internet from the description that he gave.
1 second, almost there. All
Avoid
right, there we go.
cannibalism, get tattoos. Good advice, James the Lesser Express Lane. Because they taste funny. He wouldn't eat clowns for the same reason. Kidding, but that's actually the guy that killed him. Next to him on there, unless, yeah, there's his mugshot, unless I'm loading weird on my end.
I got the altar up now.
Okay, I might have to refresh. Yeah, this is actually what he described to investigators. This altar with the skulls and the skeletons at the side.
Hmm.
Somebody did that sort of a mock-up with it, and he had said that his whole goal with that wasn't like religious or anything, but that he would feel centered with it. And it's definitely ritualistic.
Yeah. Well,
Absolutely.
yeah, very clearly.
But they breaking down the symbols with that, man.
Yeah, that's pretty bizarre. Wonder how his grandma would have felt about having that around the house.
Well, by this time it was actually his apartment.
Oh, okay.
The notorious man, what was the name of it? It's torn down now. It's actually a just a vacant lot. I can't remember the name of it right now because, like I said, I've been having kind of a crappy week with my health. But yes, back to the Ambassador Hotel. It was Tuomi. Get through that killing
You're
and
talking
disposal
about
of his
the 924 North apartment,
213
two,
apartment 213.
apartment 213. Yeah.
Yes, which is probably a good thing that the city decided to just bulldoze that entire fucking thing after all that came out. Can't even imagine. Uh,
Yeah, well, it's gonna get two types of people: people who want nothing to do with it, and people who want too much to do with it.
yeah, the serial killer groupies,
Yeah.
basically. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, he was developing further his MO by now. And like we said, he would get them with the sleeping pills, get them unconscious, and then strangle them. Um, no torture at all with that. No degrees of sadism. Um, but 2 months after the Ambassador Hotel, Dahmer came across a 14-year-old Native American male named James Dockstader. He lures him into his home with an offer, a ruse of $50 to pose for nude Polaroids. It's one that he would use often again. Seems to be a favorite amongst a lot of these killers. Um,
Right.
let's see. This is again at his grandma's house. Yeah, they engage, they have sex, and then he drugs him, strangles him on the floor of the basement of the house. And again, he leaves the body in the cellar for a week again.
Must be
Bef-
chilled in there.
I guess. I still don't know about that smell, though. There had to be something coming up.
You'd
And
think.
then he dismembers it in the same way that he did with Tuomi. He put all of Dockstader's remains in the trash besides the skull, which by then he was taking it, boiling it to help preserve it. And then he would paint them with the ones that he wanted to keep for this altar.
Wow.
Um, so, yeah. Then he pulverized the rest of the bones with the sledgehammer.
And
And
just
let's
and
see.
and then just threw things out in the trash.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that was mostly at his grandmother's again. When you get to the apartment, is when he starts dissolving them in acid.
Ah.
His favorite mixture for that was Soilex, which is an alkaline based industrial detergent, I guess, with
Mm.
bleach. But, again, you're talking about somebody who has essentially grew up as a backyard chemist with these things, as we were
Right.
talking.
And he's not a dolt. He's got a brain on his in his head. He knows how to think.
Oh,
Even if he didn't
absolutely.
apply, even if he didn't apply himself in school or the military,
Yeah.
he's not
Oh,
stupid.
absolutely.
He's not stupid.
Yeah.
So if he
And
wanted to find out how to do something, he could figure out how to do where to get that information.
oh yeah. Now, it makes me wonder if he got some of the acids from his father early on too. If he would have had easier access that way.
Yeah, maybe.
It's another thing I didn't really think about, but and
Well,
another
but in those days, there were a lot of chemicals that really weren't, being watched closely.
it's
You know,
true.
if you put in an order and you had the cash, they'd send it to you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you knew who to buy from, and you had it, you could buy enough of it to justify. If you go to an industrial supply place,
Mm-hmm.
um, or a chemical supply place, um, they'd be more than happy to
Mm-hmm.
sell you whatever.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, not as much regulation because they didn't see a need to. I think a
Right,
big thing that changed a lot of that was the Oklahoma City bombing too in
right,
1995. There's
exactly.
an interesting Netflix special on that I watched the other day about them just making the calls about McVeigh and Terry Nichols and Michael Fortier making the calls just to get the fertilizer for all that
Yeah,
and the nitrous fuel. But yeah, that's really interesting. Uh, um,
I think government regulators go overboard in that shit with with like uh, ephedrine and norepinephrine and shit that you used to be able to get really easily over the counter in your allergy meds.
mhm.
Now you have to jump through hoops, and
Yeah.
guess what? Meth's still being made.
Oh, yeah. And it always will be
Yeah,
because prohibition doesn't fucking work.
it
But
never works ever.
yep. But yeah, that's another thing with Dahmer. Another thing that made him an oddity among a lot of these killers is that race didn't factor into his thoughts at all
Right.
when he was hunting.
This is yeah. You see this in the it'll come through on the slideshow, but it's really rare for a serial killer to cross racial lines,
Yes, it
and
goes against the statistical grain.
it really does. But he does that.
Hmm. In fact, I we had one slide of all of his victims on
Hmm.
one.
Yeah, yeah, that'll be popping up here in a second.
But he said that the main thing that he would use with all that, his main calculus when he was hunting was their body shape, was
Ah,
the main thing that sparked it for him. So race just it didn't factor in with really any of that. And let's see, if yeah, he used that as a ruse quite a lot, and he's cruising a lot of these gay bars at the time. It was about it was March 24th of 1988 when he killed his next one. It was a 22-year-old bisexual man, Richard Guerrero, outside a gay bar called the Phoenix in Milwaukee. He again takes him to his grandmother's residence, and the incentive on this occasion, his ruse, was
yeah.
$50 to simply spend the remainder of the night with him. Then he drugs the guy, strangles him with a leather strap, and then performs fellatio on the corpse.
Oh,
Necrophile. And this one, I'm not sure why maybe it was to change the seasons, but he didn't keep the body around as long. Dismembered within 24 hours of the murder.
yeah.
With
What
the
time of year was
remains
this?
March.
Yeah, it's warming up, right?
Yeah. Well, and there's the other obvious reason there that he kept them around for a week at a time would have been the necrophilia as well
Right, but
with
the
the
rigor the
others.
rigor passes within 24 hours though.
Yeah,
So
but there,
depending on how I mean depending on what his interests were.
yeah. And I mean, there's ways that he could have moisturized the
Right.
corpse as needed. But I was just looking to see if there was evidence of that with the sources I have
Right.
open.
So there's the picture of all the victims up on the screen now.
It gives you an idea of race as he thought about it.
Yep.
There's only a total of 3 of them were white. So yeah, we move on
Right.
from
But
Guerrero.
but it just shows that not that he was into black men, but that he didn't care about race.
Right. Right, exactly. He was into form, as he
Yes.
said. Um, yeah, and it was actually at the next one that he lured back. He almost got caught by his grandmother.
Oh, really?
That was in April, where he lured another young man to the house with drugged coffee this time. But when the guy was out, he heard his grandma say, "Is that you, Jeff?"
Oh.
And yeah, he answers, obviously not saying, "Oh, I got somebody else here." But yeah, he opts not to kill this one, and he just, when he loses consciousness, takes him to a hospital and basically drops him off, leaves him.
Oh, man.
Yeah, yep. And it was in September of that year, 1988, where his grandmother asked him to move out because of she noticed he was bringing young men to the house, and she started noticing foul smells emanating from the basement and the garage. And that was when he moved into the one-bedroom apartment on North 25th Street, September of that year. And it was actually the day after he moved into that apartment, he was arrested for drugging and molesting a 13-year-old boy.
In one day?
Yes, one day after he moved in. And
Wow.
again, he lured this one in with the ruse of nude Polaroids. Let's see, he was convicted of second-degree sexual assault and of enticing a child for immoral purposes. And let's see, sentencing for
But
that was suspended until May 1989. So,
but he didn't kill them.
no,
Why?
it's a good question. I'm honestly not sure.
I mean,
Unless he thought too
cuz
high risk.
cuz we see this a lot of times where with people who start off with being like rapists and
Escalation.
they get tired of being arrested for, for rape, and so they start killing so they don't get
Yeah,
arrested for rape.
right. Yep.
And he's already been killing. It's weird that he would let somebody go.
Kind of go backwards with
Yeah.
that whole thing. Good point. I'm not sure why he didn't kill him, but yeah, they suspended his sentence till May 1989. Let's see, he moved back into his grandmother's house after that. And 2 months after the conviction, and 2 months prior to the sentencing, he murdered his fifth victim. I would assume that would be from most likely the stress of all of that. Probably triggered him.
Yeah.
That was a aspiring model, mixed race 24-year-old named Anthony Sears, who he met in March of 1989. Let's see. And according to Dahmer, on this occasion, though, he said he was not looking to commit a crime, which is weird. But shortly before closing time in the Phoenix that evening, Sears, quote, just started talking to me, is what Dahmer said. So he lures him to his grandmother's home, where they engage in a little bit of oral sex. Then he drugs and strangles him, per his usual MO. And he places the corpse in his grandmother's bathtub, where he decapitated the body before attempting to flay it.
But
So,
didn't he already but he had his apartment, but he went back to grandma's house for this.
oh no, he lost it with the
Oh, because of the
can
arrest.
yes, he
Gotcha.
lost that one. Um, yeah, and then he stripped the flesh. He pulverized the bones again with a sledgehammer, and he disposed of it all in the trash. And this one, he said about Sears, he found him, quote, exceptionally attractive. And this was where Dahmer started taking trophies that went beyond the Polaroids. Because the Polaroids that he would take of these victims, they were basically his trophies up until then.
Yeah.
So what does he do with Anthony Sears? He permanently retains a couple body parts. He takes
Oh.
his head and his
Yeah.
genitalia and he preserves them in acetone.
Oh,
And
nice.
yeah, and to top it all off, where does he store them? His locker at work.
What? Where's he working now?
He's still at the chocolate factory.
Oh, right.
So
Jeffrey and
I
the
can't even
Jeffrey and the
fathom how he
Chocolate
didn't get
Factory.
caught. Jeffrey and the chocolate factory. Oh man. But let's see. Yeah, in May '89, he's sentenced to 5 years probation and 1 year in jail with work release permitted, that he could keep his job at the chocolate factory.
Hmm.
Also has to, of course, register as a sex offender. But let's see. 2 months before his scheduled release from the work camp, from the penitentiary basically, he's paroled. His 5 years probation imposed in '89 began at that point in May. So he temporarily moves back in with his grandmother, and in May moves into the Oxford Apartments. That is 213,
Oh, okay.
located on North 25th Street. So that is when you move into 1990. He moves out of Grandma's house on May 14th and into 213. And he takes Sears's mummified head and genitals with him.
And Grandma
And
never saw these things. Oh, but oh no, they were at work. They had been at work, right?
right, the head and genitalia had been at work. I don't know how nobody else would have seen that at
Yeah.
work. But man, let's see, it was his sixth victim now, Raymond Smith.
Somebody going in there to steal Jeffrey's lunch and get a big surprise.
Probably. Yeah.
What?
See, it was May 14th in 1990. He tries a new ruse. Raymond Smith, a 32-year-old male hooker. He says $50, come back and we'll fuck. So he gives him a drink laced with 7 sleeping pills, manually strangles him. Let's see. I think Raymond Smith might actually be the photo, the Polaroid that we
Yeah, we have
pulled
that.
for that. This Polaroid is actually from the book Practical Homicide Investigation by Lieutenant now Vernon J. Gaberth in the NYPD. He's a pretty noted
Yeah, it's
homicide investigator.
check this out. And his
Yes,
hands.
that is, I took that picture right out of the book. That's the head and hands.
In
And the genitalia.
yeah.
And then you saw how Dahmer would like to pose a lot of the bodies with the slide that was just before this one, I think. Almost in like a crab formation.
Right.
But yeah, those were Polaroids taken right out of the investigation of his apartment. They were given to Gaberth by the Milwaukee PD. So yeah, wow indeed, Patty. Let's see, in 1990, gave him the 7. He spray painted Smith's skull.
Wow.
See,
This
you know, it's so weird. These, the particular killings, there's a section in here in this book all on homosexual killings.
yeah.
And a lot of these guys like Dahmer who, you know, just targeted homosexuals, that was one of their favorite things to do was to keep trophies with Polaroids.
Hmm.
There's another guy that's listed in here right after him, a killer by the name of Larry Eiler, who was also in Illinois and Wisconsin, actually. 375 Polaroids they found of 23 different victims with
Holy
him.
cow. You know, there's
There
something.
it is. That's the one I was talking about earlier.
Yeah, yeah. And it looks like he's missing his head already. Or
He
is it just
is.
tucked back?
No, it's gone. His
Okay.
head's gone. It was the one that was laid out on the other slide.
There's something else that about Dahmer and many of these other people that we've profiled, and that is they're just balls out boldness with
Yeah,
with the shit that they do without getting caught year after year after year. Um, you know that you know taking people off the street or from a bar or whatever, and he keeps fucking body parts at work. Jesus Christ.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it just keeps going on and on. They just do all of this very just bold as shit stuff without, and they're all clearly thinking, yeah, this will work, and it
yeah.
does.
Oh, yeah.
It's
I
just
mean,
astonishing.
no doubt about it. And with so many of them, I think you can attribute that to psychopathy too. The lack of impulse control that's characteristic of it.
Well, it's not just that. It's like they don't.
Yeah, it runs deeper than that
It,
too.
it, it's that, and it's also this, this thinking that the I can do this stuff and not get caught.
Oh yeah,
Um,
feelings of invincibility through a lot
right?
of it.
Wasn't it Fish who believed, hey, if God didn't want me to do this, he'd stop me. He'd come down and stop
Yes,
me. And I
yes,
think there's a lot of that, even if they don't specifically think of God. They think, if I wasn't supposed to do this, then I'd be stopped somehow.
yeah. Oh yeah. Most definitely, although Albert Fish, as we know, is a very extreme example
Oh,
because of his psychosis.
his many, his
Ye-
many, many problems in his
Yeah,
head.
yeah, but yeah, that's how Dahmer started. Let's see. After Smith, he lured, oh yeah, I'm sorry, Raymond Smith, because there's another Smith that actually came right after this. Edward Smith drugged and strangled him um, rather than immediately acidifying the skeletons or repeating previous processes of bleaching. He placed this guy's skeleton, Edward Smith's, in his freezer in the Oxford apartments for several months. And keep in mind, throughout all of this, inside the apartments, he's keeping these gigantic vats of acid that he's dissolving all this in.
Now, here's the thing about acids. They often have a very strong odor,
Yes.
especially in quantities like essentially bathtub size quantities of this shit. How does nobody smell the acid itself?
Well, that was a weird thing. There was, I guess, the apartment management, a lot of the neighbors were complaining not so much about a chemical smell, but about
Yeah.
the smell of like death out of there.
Oh,
Like it was that bad. And
wow.
apparently, Dahmer told them at first blush when they complained to him about this that
Yeah.
he had a bunch of food that spoiled in his freezer, and they
Well,
bought it.
really, because if that's the case, all you got to do is throw it out, and then you don't have a smell.
Yes,
That's that's
but
that's
then
a that's a pretty weak explanation, in my opinion.
I thought that his second one was even more weak when they came back, still complaining about it. He said, "Oh, all my tropical fish died." Literally. And
Yeah,
apparently they
that
bought that
that.
too.
What is he keeping for tropical fish? Kraken?
Yeah, but yeah, I honestly, it just, the omissions and the stupidity of some people through all this is
Yeah.
just, oh my God. And that's like when you get in closer to when he was caught, getting into 1991. So you start that year off, February. He observes a 17-year-old standing at a bus stop near Marquette University up there in Milwaukee. He leads him into his apartment with an offer again, a ruse of posing, nude for photographs, and this time he's sexual intercourse too. Drugs,
Mm.
strangles him. Let's see. He retains the skull, hands, and genitals, photographing each stage of the dismemberment. So he's keeping trophies on a couple levels there, literal body parts, and again, the Polaroids. And then he starts, putting more of them into his freezer and his fridge and all this.
Mm.
Um, let's see. April of that year, 19-year-old Errol Lindsay. This guy was the one who was heterosexual. I was getting those confused. He lures him in again with the ruse of just posing. And it's this one where he decides, okay, I want to make a sex slave before I kill this guy. So
Oh.
he drills a hole in his skull and pours hydrochloric acid into it.
Thinking that would what? Just disable his upper level processes,
Yes.
but keep him alive?
Yes.
Did it work?
According, no.
I didn't think so.
According, yeah. After this, he awakes and let's see. He says, "I have a headache. What time it is? What time is it?" In response, Dahmer drugs him, strangles him, decapitates, retains his skull again, flays the body, places the skin in a solution of cold water and salt for several weeks in the hope of permanently retaining it.
The skin, trying to tan the skin?
Yes. Um, but it became too frayed and brittle, so he got rid of it.
Well, I'm pretty sure salt's not how you tan hides.
Yeah, I doubt it. Um, let's see.
Actually, I think urine is one of the key elements in tanning. Uric
Really?
acid. Yeah.
Interesting. That was another thing I was going to look up for this, but I wish that I had, was the zombie cocktails that they would use in traditional voodoo.
Yeah.
Because I want to say,
Was he into voodoo?
well, no, it made me think of it, because
Oh.
essentially what he was trying to do was produce a zombie by pouring
Ah,
acid into the guy's brain. Which the
true.
second guy that he tried that on, he tried it with boiling water into his frontal lobe after taking a power drill to his skull.
Couldn't he have just a lobotomy's not a complicated process.
That's what I was just thinking too. And even just literally an ice pick through the eye.
Yeah.
I wonder why he didn't think of that.
I mean,
Yeah.
it is one of the most simple medical procedures imaginable.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's weird. It is very weird. He's not the only one. That guy I mentioned, Eiler, also tried producing his own sex slaves, but he did it in a different way, from what I had heard. And a lot of that was actually pouring acid through the eye, was the way that he tried doing it.
Oh man.
So he's one we might have to get in on another day. But
Okay.
oh yeah, it was around this time again, 1991, where you have a lot of the residents of the Oxford apartments are starting to bitch more about the smell, and they had also were bitching about the occasional sound of a chainsaw from his apartment.
Yeah, not the kind of sound you expect to come out of an apartment.
Yeah, and I was just looking for the excuse for the chainsaw, but I didn't see it. But let's see. And this is when his undoing sort of starts. It's May 26, 1991. He comes across a 14-year-old, counteracts Cynthia Sumaphone, up there in Milwaukee. He approaches him with an offer of money again to accompany him to his apartment to pose. Um, and oddly enough, this guy was the younger brother of the boy who he was charged with molesting in 1988. So 3 years before.
Really?
Yeah.
A brother?
Yes. And he was initially reluctant to go, but he ended up going. He posed for 2 pictures. And let's see, he was actually the second one where he tried a hole into him and again hydrochloric acid into the frontal lobe. And then there was actually the third one where he did the boiling water. So yeah, he returned May 27 now.
Man, it just keeps going on with and on with this guy.
Yeah. But oddly enough, this one, after he gets the hydrochloric acid into his brain, he somehow manages to escape from Dahmer's apartment. And he's out there on the street, surrounded by these three women. And Dahmer, he finds him out there. And apparently, these women are like, okay, we're calling the cops because they see he's got a gigantic hole in his head. And
That would be a good indicator that
yeah, and he's also
law
naked out there, by
enforcement
the way.
professionals may be required.
Yeah. But yeah, upon the arrival of 2 officers, Dahmer, who's at the scene, his demeanor is fairly relaxed, and he tells the officers that Cynthia Sumphone was his boyfriend, that he drank too much following a quarrel, and that he frequently behaved in this manner when intoxicated.
Accidentally drilled a hole in his head.
I don't know, man, how he did that, but the women standing around there were just like, what the hell is this guy talking about? This is bullshit. And the officers apparently looked at them and said, shut the hell up, was the quote. And don't interfere because this is a domestic. So they basically buy his story,
Oh man.
Dahmer's story. Yes. So they cover the kid with a towel and they walked him back to the apartment. So
Wow.
yeah, they get back there and Dahmer, he basically lets them just tuck their heads in to look around, and he
Yeah.
shows them the Polaroids that he took,
Ah.
and that basically proves it in their minds. So they leave. And they noted when they were up there a, quote, strange scent reminiscent
Jeez.
of excrement. So he had a couple of bodies in there decomposing still.
Christ.
Yeah. And he said Dahmer basically looks at him when they bring it up, and he said, you want to investigate it? And the officer, according to Dahmer, just peeked his head in. And he didn't really take a good look. So they leave.
You know, it's interesting how psychologically how that works. That if you try to hide something, people become more interested. But if you say, "Hey, you want to check it out?" people are like, "Oh, well, if you're gonna offer, then no."
Yeah. It's, man.
Uh,
But,
It's a
even,
very common tactic,
wow.
and it works really quite effectively.
Man, even if they had just done a basic background on him, they
Right?
would have seen that the guy's registered as a sex offender. You know?
Sure.
Man. So he gets the kid back there, and he gives him another injection of hydrochloric acid into his brain, which kills him.
Wow.
And let's see, it was May 28th. Dahmer takes a day off from the chocolate factory, and he dismembers the couple of bodies that are there, and he keeps both the skulls. So let's see, it is June 30th. He finds a 20-year-old in Chicago to kill. He offers,
Wait, back up 1 second. Something's not sitting right with me. This kid that got out and then the cops came. How old was he?
he was, let me check that again. I wanted to say he was 18, 17 to 19, somewhere in that age range. 17,
So he's underage,
yes,
and they just let it
barely.
go because
Apparently,
he's the boyfriend. He says.
or how much egg they had on their face after they figured all this out.
Not
Man,
enough.
yeah, yeah, definitely not enough, but man, it's just horrible. Let's see, June 30th is when he finds a 20-year-old in Chicago at the bus station to kill. Matt Turner was his name. He does the usual MO with him, places his head and his internal organs in plastic bags in the freezer.
Are we getting to the end of his list yet?
We are
Oh
about
man,
there.
because this is crazy.
Yes. Let's see. Skip ahead to July 5th. He had a 23-year-old, again from Chicago, um, drugged him. And this was the one he actually tried the boiling water on into his skull,
Mm,
which sent him into a coma and killed him.
imagine.
Um, yeah, no shit. July 15, 24-year-old Oliver Lacey. Again, the ruse of posing nude. Drugs him. Let's see. He tries chloroform this time. Kind of weird. Deviates a little bit. Let's see. Skeleton in the freezer and his head and heart in the refrigerator. And things are starting to come to a head. 4 days later, he's fired from the chocolate factory. Then he lures a 25-year-old to his apartment. Left him laying on a sheet for 2 days, dead on his bed. And he finds him covered in maggots later on.
Yeah, that'll happen.
No shit. Man. Let's see, it was July 22nd, 1991. And he actually approaches three men this time with a $100 offer to accompany him to his place again for the ruse.
Yeah.
A 32-year-old Tracy Edwards is the only one who agrees. And he goes up there, and basically Dahmer tries to cuff him. Things get hinky, and this guy, he actually manages to get into a fist fight with him.
Oh,
Yep, and he gets his way out of the apartment and flags down a cop,
and that's got
telling him,
so this is finally the end of the line for old Jeffrey, I'm guessing.
yes, telling him that, quote, a freak had placed a cuff on him and asked the police if he could remove the cuff. The officer, if can you get this off of me, and let's go back up there. So the
Yeah.
cop agrees, and they go back up there, and Edwards says, yeah, it's that guy. So they go in. That's when they find all the shit in his place, man. I was just looking for the entire haul, which I have a list of what they found. Uh, 4 male torsos stuffed into a metal barrel, 2 heads in the refrigerator, 2 heads in the freezer, 7 skulls, boxes of bones and severed hands, genitalia in a lobster pot, a freezer packed with lungs, intestines, a kidney, a liver, and a human heart that Jeffrey told police he was, quote, saving to eat later.
He didn't say, "No, these aren't my body parts. These belong to my friend."
No, he didn't try any of his shit this time. he realized he was pretty much dead to rights, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
And that's where, even when they got him into the interrogation, he's just like, yeah, I don't want a lawyer in here. You
Yeah.
got me. I'm done, basically. And that's when they actually get him in for the trial and everything. He pleads guilty, but insane, is how he pled.
Mm.
So the question throughout all this is just, is he sane? So you have
Well,
a bunch of different theories on that.
okay.
Um, the one that I think I agreed most with was from Dr. Park Dietz, who is he's a noted forensic psychiatrist who does a lot of work with law enforcement. And he basically said what really proved it to him was Dahmer's alcohol problem, of all things. Because Dahmer would always be drunk before he would kill.
Hmm.
He need the Dr. Dietz's theory was that he needed the alcohol to work up the courage to do what he's doing, because otherwise he would have avoided it. And that
Interesting.
is, yeah, and that is the biggest proof that he is sane. Although you had others arguing that he was psychotic at some degree. But yeah, I totally agree. He's sane with it.
Yeah, I have to agree. I mean, the fact that he, you know, goes to any effort at all to hide his behaviors and his crimes
Mm-hmm.
indicates that he knows that it's wrong.
Oh, absolutely. And like Mr. Deadman also says,
Mens
he,
rea.
yeah, mens rea, premeditation is what it also showed. So this wasn't just impulsive with him.
Right.
He knew what he was doing. He hunted. And I think he even tried a lot of bullshit behind bars too. Like his big thing with that was when he's behind bars, oh, I'm a born again Christian now.
Oh, yeah.
He was also one of them who tried to say that pornography made me do it, which is
Um,
bullshit too.
right.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
Bundy tried that
yeah,
among
I
others.
forgot he did that too.
Yeah, he blamed a lot of it on not just him, but a lot of serial killers he blamed on pornography.
Hmm. Well, at least Ted didn't try the whole religion
No,
thing
no, he
when they
didn't.
caught him. Man, don't blame the porn. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, at any rate, it was 1994, and he had
Seriously
Dookie.
though, if porn was a causal factor in this, we would be cheek to jowl with serial killers today.
Yes. Oh
They'd
yeah, and they've had.
there'd be serial killers on every block,
Oh yeah. Well, and they've
but we
actually
don't.
shown, I think, that the opposite. That
Yes,
porn is not correlated with sexual violence. It's correlated with decreases in it.
yes.
But yeah, and let's see, that was 1994. Dahmer's bludgeoned by an inmate in prison.
Mm.
I actually have a bit of the New York Times article about that. Jeffrey Dahmer, multiple killer, is bludgeoned to death in prison. Jeffrey L. Dahmer, whose gruesome exploits of murder, necrophilia, and dismemberment shocked the world in 1991, was attacked and killed today in a Wisconsin prison, where he was serving 15 consecutive life terms. Mr. Dahmer was 34, older than any of his victims, who ranged in age from 14 to 33. He died of massive head injuries suffered sometime between 7:50 and 8:10 a.m. when he was found in a pool of blood in a toilet area next to the prison's gym. The guy that we have the slide of him right next to Dahmer is actually the guy who killed him.
Okay. Yeah. That was there any reason given?
He tried to say later on that he had, I guess, a newspaper or something with him and basically said, Jeffrey, is it true? is it all true? And Dahmer looked at him and he said, yeah, it's all true and I don't regret it. And I guess it just provoked a fight.
Wow.
But I mean, he was pretty well hated through there, you know. Yeah, there he is with Lionel in the Stone Phillips interview.
Hmm. Interesting. Interesting character.
Yeah, he's quite the oddity, even when looking at all this.
Yeah, he does stand out. I mean, um, his his behaviors and his patterns pretty unique.
Yeah, absolutely. As a follow up to the Cannibal Albert Fish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Following up tonight.
okay.
Yeah, check out the Dead Man's Tome podcast following up tonight. Best Jocks of Horror.
Yeah, that's coming up next
Yep, you
on
guys had
Dead
fun
Man's
with
Tome.
that. It'll be a lot of fun.
All right, so let's sign off and say good night, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening. Like our podcast, share it around to all your friends and enemies, and tune in next week. And
Absolutely.
night, everybody.
Good night.